everybody. Welcome. The theme of this stream, if you can't tell, is all about your spirit guides. So I have a whole notebook of information to share with you about like what is a guide, how to work with them, how to connect with them, that kind of thing. Here we go, guys. Cracking into it. What is a guide? Figured I'd start off with the base. A guide is a being you get at birth to help you through life. Everyone has at least one. Can't even read my own writing. I wrote all this. I'm not reading off like a book or something that someone else wrote. I wrote this. I can't even like get my own thoughts out. Okay, anyway. Unlike a passed on loved one who can be there for you. Also, you will never have known this being in your lifetime. There is a thing called the hierarchy of spirit, and central guides are a step above spirit, aka passed on human souls. They have evolved on their own soul's journey and have taken on the role of guiding human souls on the earth plane on their own soul's journey. So, your guide is, your guide or guides are there to help you on your soul's journey along life. So, working with your guides. Because we all have free will, guides cannot interfere in your life without your consent. Guides will never be mean or berate you or terrorize you. If they do something that scares you, just remember that it's not their intent. Some of this is in our own societal view of the unknown and how we have been programmed to think that spirits equal scary and evil. If you feel like there is something communicating with you that's truly malevolent, that is not your guide. Because, you know, like, we're programmed from a young age to, like, ghosts are scary, things like that. So when you're working with your guides, there should be nothing scary involved. And a lot of the times it's just like a miscommunication and a misperception or something that we perceive as scary because communicating with the unknown has been hammered into us from such a young age that, that's scary. The next section I labeled as asking your guides for help. This is like the hardest part of the journey, right? Is like connecting with something that we've never communicated with before. The easiest way to start connecting with guides is by asking them for help. But you have to be open to hearing them. Things will start small. The signs will be like seeing repeating numbers, having songs that call out to you on the radio or like on your Spotify. Unusual animals will cross your path. This is your guides answering your call. It's acknowledgement that they're there and are willing to help and hear you. What comes after is the tough part. Listening. Listening to the guidance they give is the toughest part. Usually this starts as nagging feelings over a situation in your life, the dramatic urge to handle things a certain way, not an emotional response, but a nagging intuition. For example, when I was driving, I suddenly got the drastic urge to slow down out of nowhere, like I was just driving along. My radio started flickering and I felt I should not try to make it through a yellow light, and then I happened to avoid being T-boned. That's a case of like my guides being like, hey, listen, something's coming up, slow down. We are so conditioned to not listen to our gut instincts and brush it off, but this is where our guides' guidance is. That tugging feeling on your ear. By listening to the whisper of our intuition. Oh my god, I can't even read my own writing, guys. I can't even read my own writing. By listening to the whisper, I've always been terrible at doing presentations, can you tell? By listening to the whisper of intuition my guides have given me, it saved my life, saved me from panic attacks, located lost items, and have reassured me on the outcomes of certain events. So the most basic thing you can do to work with your guides is listen. Don't second guess your instincts and try to retrain your brain to not brush it off. It's a really hard process to undo and unlearn, but you can get there step by step. Also, that idea that pops into your head out of nowhere, write it down. Always write it down. Always write it down. It's often a gift from them. Also, another great way to connect with them is by using tarot. So if you have a deck, you can just ask them like, hey guides, what are you trying to tell me right now? and they'll normally give you like a pretty straightforward answer. That's another great way to start connecting to them. My guides personally wanted me to write this part. So much of this information I just channeled from them. They just channeled it through me. That's why I'm having a hard time reading it, because I was like, where did this information come from? They just were like, yo, write this down. So this part was very important to them. It's called honoring your guides. It's important that we thank and honor our guides, especially when we work with them. Some ways that you can do this that are very simple are lighting a candle, leaving out a chalice of water dedicated to them, burning some incense for them, and especially just thanking them in general. So I recommend saying thank you out loud to them, because it's a lot easier to remember to say thank you like out loud than trying to remember like before you go to bed to thank them in your head. But you can also just thank them in your head. What I like to do is I like to dedicate a chalice with essential oils in it, like water mixed with essential oils, and I normally ask them what kind they want, and then I'll get a gut feeling about which one they want. I also like to share wine and coffee with them, just little things like I'll find. I put mine on my altar, but you definitely don't need to have an altar to do this. You can just find like a little windowsill or a quiet place in your house to just offer them something. But it's really important to honor them and thank them for everything they do. And my guides really wanted me to write this part down, so that's my little info from them to you. Here are some advanced techniques that you can do to connect with them. The most important one, I think, honestly, is meditating. And I know that's like the answer to everything. And when I first started doing all of this stuff, the answer to everything was meditating. And I was like, oh my God, please, I don't want to hear that again. But it really honestly is super important. So meditating opens you up to receiving the information. It's important. It's an important part of connecting to your guides. And this doesn't have to be in the traditional way where you just sit and like meditate, you know, like the traditional way. My favorite way to do this is by taking a bath. During one is how I actually learned one of my guides' names. They told me one of their names during like my meditating bath. Just find a method that works for you. That can be taking a walk, listening to music, lighting some incense and just focusing on the smoke. That's a really great way. If you can't just sit alone with your thoughts, is by lighting a candle or lighting some incense and just focusing on the flame or the smoke. Having something to focus on is really important if you can't like quiet your mind and meditate, I find. And then obviously bath time. Bath time is like a huge one for me. Anything that focuses you on the present moment, you'll then be open to receiving. That's the perfect time to ask them questions. And this was very important for them, for me to tell you. They were like, make sure you tell them this. Make sure that you don't expect the answers to come in the way that you want them to, the way you're expecting to receive the answer. You have to be open to accepting other forms of answers from them, especially if you're asking them a certain question. That's the perfect time to journal and channel. So another way I recommend, like advanced technique to connect with them, is called channeling. It's when you empty your mind and you just start writing. You just start writing a sentence and you empty your brain and you just keep writing. I know that sounds weird, but that's how like a ton of information comes out. That's how I got information about my past life. I just kept writing and writing, and all of a sudden I had like this whole scene of my past life. After meditating is a perfect time to try this. And honestly, you'll be really surprised at what comes out, even if it's not information from your guides or the divine or whatever. Even if it's coming from your own subconscious, it's really, really interesting to see what comes out. So I have an exercise from this book that I wanted to share that is all about like connecting to this. This is the Akashic Records book by Sandra Ann Taylor. And there was a really good exercise in here to help like meet your guide and like access your own records. And I think I can probably paraphrase it. Basically, sit down and imagine yourself getting out of a car. Imagine yourself getting out of a car and meeting a cloaked figure and having them lead you to some sort of building where your records are. And this is you meeting up with your guide. Honestly, that helped me so much. That helped me connect with them so much. Just I imagined it over and over, like me getting out of a car and meeting with this figure that was the representation of my guide and having them lead me to like some kind of temple or building or whatever. The Akashic records are the records of like everything that has happened and everything that will happen, and you can access this with your guides. They can help see in your own personal records and help give you information. Honestly, I don't focus too much on exactly like what's in it. I just kind of use that exercise to connect with my guide, not really to connect with my records. So that's a little exercise that you can do if you're having trouble like connecting with them, is to visualize. Another thing that really helps me is talking out loud to them. So that sounds silly and it might sound like you're talking to yourself, but talking out loud to them like they're really there, because they are there, helps me a lot. Like I'll be like, hey, what's up? What do I need to do? And then being quiet and listening. Honestly, listening is the number one most important part of this journey of connecting to them, to receive information to them. It's just listening and quieting your mind enough to hear it. And like they said, like they wanted me to tell you, be open to not expecting an answer in a certain packaged way like you thought. Another great way it's a little harder to do, to receiving information from them, is to pay attention to what you hear and like what is going through your mind when you're in that state where you're half asleep and half awake. That's where so much information is given to me from them. For example, I had asked them at one point, what time of the year should I go visit LA? This was like over a year ago. So I was like, when should I visit LA? Should I go in October or should I go in December? And when I was half awake, they distinctly said December. You have to go in December because this thing is going to happen. And I was like, that's not going to happen. And I didn't believe it. So I booked the trip for October. Then the thing that they said was going to happen in December happened in December. And they were so annoyed. They were like, bitch, what did we fucking tell you? And that information came to me when I was half asleep. So it's really, it can be really hard to train yourself to do that. But when you're half asleep, just try to hold on to those thoughts and information that you get as long as you can. I know that's easier said than done, but that's where so much information is normally gifted to people, is when they're in that half awake, half asleep state, because when you go to sleep, you can connect to like the astral realm, and you can connect to them when you're half asleep, or when you're asleep. So when you're half asleep, you're kind of like retaining that information that you learned overnight. And make sure you write it down. Learn that the hard way. Make sure you write it down. Hearing isn't actually hearing them. It's more like how we process our own thoughts. At least for me, it's really hearing telepathically. So, learning to hear what they are saying is learning to separate what they say from your own stream of consciousness. And that's the hard part, right? So normally for me, this is reassurance of some kind. I'll be worried about something and my thoughts will be interrupted by, that's not going to happen, or that's not how that is. And then they'll like tell me the outcome of what I'm worrying about. And they're always right, of course. They're always right. And the tone of these words are completely different and break through my own panic. The words have their own energetic signature, is one way to look at it, to them. And it took me a really long time to be able to differentiate their words from mine, but by being open and listening and just really not brushing off that feeling is one way that you do it. Like, I think one of the most important things to do on this journey is to unlearn brushing off our intuition and our nagging feeling, or that voice that tells us not to do that, or our voice that says, hey, this is gonna happen. That's honestly, in all my classes that I've taken and from everything I've learned, that is the number one most important thing, is like deprogramming ourselves to trust what we're receiving. Because our whole lives we've been told, like, that's not real, or that's stupid, or whatever you're told. We're all conditioned by society to feel that way. So that is that's like honestly the most important thing, is to try to unlearn that and to trust yourself and to trust what you're hearing. And it's a lot of hard work. It doesn't happen overnight, and you have to be patient. And that's also really hard. Like, right? We want answers right away. We want to learn, we want to know how to do it right away. But by committing to it and doing it a little bit each day, like even if you spend 5 minutes a day asking your guide something and just sitting in quiet, listening, or focusing on something, you'll get there step by step, and you'll be able to open yourself up, like, to receiving it. Especially taking away the expectation that it's going to come and you're going to receive it in a certain way, I think is also one of the most important things. Like, asking them a question and then instantly thinking that you're going to receive the answer in your head. Maybe that's not the answer. Maybe the answer will present itself by certain information crossing your path. Like, you'll be on Twitter and something related to the question that you ask will like pop up, or something on TV in a TV show will pop up. That happens to me a lot. Oh my God, my ring. I'll ask a question about something, and then the TV show I'm watching will have to do with the thing I was asking the question on. Like, you can't always rely on the answer to be like neatly packaged for you. You have to listen and kind of review the signs that come your way, because not everything is a sign, and interpreting them is honestly the hardest part. So it takes patience, it takes a lot of self-reflection, it takes a lot of being open and listening and connecting to yourself and not running away from yourself and your own intuition. That's really all the information that I have. Like, I'm not an expert or anything. This is just going from my experience and me working with my own guides for the past 5 years now, I think. 5 years? And I took a class. This is just from my own experience. If you have any questions about it, it takes a really long time. It started as just me seeing shit, like repeating numbers, animals, things crossing my path, things showing up on Twitter that related to the questions I asked. It progressed to them telling me things when I was half asleep and remembering and telling me certain outcomes. And then I started meditating, I started opening myself up more to them, and I started hearing them more, and then I started being able to communicate with them more. So that's the progression that working with them has taken. And it's taken a long time. It's taken 5 years. It took 5 years to get here, which it can take you a year, it can take you months, it can take you 5 years, it can take you 10 years. There's no time limit, and everyone's different. So please ask. Like I said, there's no stupid questions here. Do you think my guides get upset when I don't communicate with them consistently? Like, 1 week I'll pull cards talking to them every night, and then I just don't feel like in the right headspace to talk to them for days. Ocean trash, they never get upset with you. They'll never be they can be disappointed in you. They can be like, girl, what the fuck are you doing? Like they say to me, but they will never actually be mad at you or disappointed or angry. They know that life is life. They know that things happen. And when they ask you to change something, this is really good advice that I got from my teacher. When they give you some advice on what to do, they never expect you to implement it overnight. They know that life is a journey, and sometimes it takes a really long time to implement change and better ourselves. And they never expect it to be overnight. They never expect direct communication all the time. They're just here to help you and support you and make sure that you know you're never alone. So they would never be upset if you went like a week without talking to them. Recently, I went like 2 months without connecting to mine. And when I like got back online, so to speak, when I like rebooted myself up, they were like, hey girl, where have you been? Basically, like, hey, we missed you. Here's some info. I never would discount therapy. Like, therapy while you're going on a spiritual journey is so important. Some people spread this rhetoric online that it is like, if you are going to be spiritual or you're going to be a witch or you're going to be a medium, that you have to stop therapy, and that's like totally wrong. No, not at all. Therapy is a super important part of shadow work and getting in tune with yourself so you can be better at all of this. thank you guys so much. Like, seriously, thank you so much. I hope that this stream was helpful to you. I hope you learned something awesome. And I was able to give you some good advice on where to start. Obviously, I'm just speaking from my own experience and from what I've learned from teachers. And hopefully it passed along some great info to you. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week and take care of yourselves.